You're listening to the Balanced Educator Podcast, episode number 124.
Welcome to the Balanced Educator. We're your hosts, Kaylee
and Josiane from EduCalm. Our intention is to equip and empower you to feel more calm, balanced, and joyful in all aspects of your life. Hello there, and welcome to the Balanced Educator Podcast. Since Kaylee did a solo episode last time, I just wanted to start by wishing you a happy new year. 2020 was one crazy year, and now we can say it's over and we are in 2021. New year, new beginnings. So exciting. So today I am doing a solo episode and I'm going to share with you a lesson and project that I did with my students all about growth mindset. It was an interdisciplinary project. I loved it. My students loved it. And so I just thought it would be fun to share this project with you because it's so easy for anyone to do in their classrooms, and it teaches the kids so much. So before we dive in, I just want to share with you our newest sponsor. So as teachers, we have a ton of papers to deal with. We all know it. It's no fun. And it's so much worse when you have papers from multiple classes. Sometimes it's difficult to keep all those papers in and around the classroom organized. Can you relate? So today we are so excited to share our newest sponsor, the Simply Organized Teacher. Kelly Jackson is the face behind the name, and she has created an awesome and helpful course that I recently took and loved. If you remember Kelly, we had her on the show to talk all things organization in episode 70, so make sure you go back to that to check it out. The goal of the Organize Your Classroom Papers course is to sift through, clean out, and organize all your papers so that you can stop spending time trying to remember where you put that copy or having to get your class involved in looking for those materials you just misplaced. So you can access the course by heading to educalm.com/TBE124. So that's educalm, educalm.com/TBE as in the Balanced Educator 124. And you can click on the link to the Simply Organized Teachers course. Inside the course, they talk about organizing filing cabinets and digital files, lesson plan materials, basically any kind of paper material. Kelly shows you practical ways that you can organize and systemize those papers. In less than 40 minutes, Kelly will teach you how to clean out, organize, and systemize the papers in your classroom so that you can get rid of some of that clutter. So again, that's educalm.com/TBE124 to get access to the course as of today. All right, let's dive into this episode. So this school year, I don't know about you, but I really wanted to emphasize and prioritize social emotional learning before all other things. With everything that's been going on and the statistics for mental health show it, kids need it. They need that time for social emotional. And not only that, but even my school division and school told us, to really spend all the time we need to on social emotional. So my goal this year, and it's kind of a weird year for me too, because I'm teaching grade 6 this year. Originally, I was supposed to teach 5-6 this year, but my job description changed before school started because we needed to create classroom spaces where all the kids could be 2 meters apart. So I'm actually teaching 3 groups of grade 6 students, of 15 students each, which has been really, really interesting. I mean, it's had its advantages and its disadvantages, but I've really enjoyed doing that. And so I'm only teaching 2 subjects this year, and I'm teaching them 3 times over, which I feel like has really given me the opportunity to better myself as a teacher, because when I'm repeating the lessons, they just get better every time. And I always feel bad for that first group that got the lesson that just didn't get the same quality as the last group when I did it again. But anyway, that's another story. But my goal this year was really to focus on social emotional and also to create interdisciplinary projects and lessons, etc., that would work in both my health class and my ELA class. So I kind of meshed both of these together to be able to just focus on social emotional. Meanwhile, teaching them what they need to learn in the language arts. So one of the first things that I wanted to tackle this year was specifically the topic of growth mindset. I just feel like it's such an important topic. It is, I mean, and especially, like I said, in this pandemic, like the students need to learn and know that they can get past this. They can grow through whatever is difficult right now. They can do hard things, right? And we know 2020 was hard. So I really wanted to teach about growth mindset and really take a deep dive. So I actually did some lessons and projects that were interdisciplinary health and ELA on growth mindset that lasted throughout the entire term of September to December. Of course, that's not the only thing I did, but I weaved it in here and there throughout the entire term. So the first thing I did, and I had some visuals to help me through this conversation, but was just to talk about the brain. We talked about the different parts of the brain. We talked about how the brain works, how the different parts of the brain work. And also we had a discussion about what the brain does. Like, what does it do for us? Like, for example, it helps us to focus. It helps us to have a memory and to remember things that happened. It keeps us safe, etc. So we just had a discussion about that, kind of a brainstorm discussion. I actually did a kind of web on the board as we were going through that. And then we talked about how everyone can learn new things and how our brain can change over time. Which is essentially the growth mindset versus fixed mindset. So during that time, I kind of introduced the concept of growth mindset versus fixed mindset. I asked the students what they thought these meant, and being grade 6 students, they figured out the words growth versus fixed. So then we talked about growth mindset specifically and its meaning, and I literally just pulled up the definition of growth mindset, which I have here. Individuals who believe their talents can be developed through hard work, good strategies, and input from others have a growth mindset. They tend to achieve more than those with a more fixed mindset, those who believe their talents are innate gifts. So we talked about that, and we talked about how in certain areas of our lives, we can have a growth mindset, but then sometimes in other areas, we have a fixed mindset. So it's not like we have one or the other at all times. I know for myself, and I told the students this, that sometimes I do things and I realize how in that specific, area of my life, that I realized suddenly, oh man, I have a fixed mindset about this thing that I have to do. And so it's realizing it and then, okay, I need to change this mindset, and then working through it so that I can take on a growth mindset in that area of my life. So then one of the newest things that we have in Educalm Classroom is we added in very recently a video about growth mindset. And it's a video that explains growth mindset, what it is, how it works, what it does to the brain, and all of that. Super awesome video. It's about, I think it's like 3 minutes long, and it really shares the in and outs of this whole growth mindset idea. So showed them that right away. And of course that sparked more conversation. So had more conversation about growth mindset, and students really started sharing their ideas or their, experiences with their mindsets and really getting in touch with what their mindsets are around certain things. And this video, this growth mindset video, is just like so jam-packed with such useful information that I showed the video to each of my groups. I think I showed it 2 to 3 times, depending on the group, depending on what I saw their needs were. So basically, the next time I saw them, they watched it again. Repetition is really important, and this video in Educalm Classroom is really, really awesome. Those of you who have a membership to Educalm Classroom, if you make your way to the growth mindset theme and then the first growth mindset unit, you'll find it there. It should be right there up at the top to show to your students. So that was pretty much the first lesson. With some of the groups, this lasted one kind of period, like an hour period. Some of them it lasted a little bit longer. It's so interesting how each of my groups are so different and how they react and discuss these things. It's just been so interesting to see that. So then the next time we talked about a little bit how the brain is like a sponge. And I asked the students, why is the brain like a sponge? So we talked about that, the fact that it absorbs. The brain is amazing. It just absorbs whatever we pay attention to, right? And then we went back in time and talked about what we learned as babies, right? Learning how to walk, learning how to eat, eating solid foods, bringing the food to our mouths, right? Crawling, everything we learned. We learned our first words and then how to say, 2-word phrases, then full sentences. And how, as we were learning these things as babies, our brain was growing and creating new connections. And so even now, and as grade 6 students and as an adult, when we learn new things, our brain grows and it creates new connections, and in turn it becomes stronger. And the more that we learn and take on these new challenges, the more we're open to learning and taking on these new challenges. And talking about, vice versa, if we only do things that are easy, our brains won't grow and evolve. So it's really important to do hard things. It's really, really, really important to work at things, to give ourselves big challenges. That math concept that seems impossible to learn, well, tackle it. It's good for your brain, right? I also, within that conversation, and this was inspired from, I don't know if you've seen it on Netflix, but Michael Jordan's The Last Dance docuseries, which I absolutely loved. It was amazing. But I was kind of inspired to share with the students a little bit about Michael Jordan. Obviously, I didn't share The Last Dance, but I found some videos on YouTube that really showed how Michael Jordan became the most known and best basketball player in the entire world because of that growth mindset that he had, right? And the video that I shared talked about how he didn't make the team in high school. And so he decided that, he accepted the challenge and he decided that he was going to get in or make it the next year. So he worked at it and worked at it and worked at it. And I mean, guess what? He became the world's most known basketball player. So of course, that story also sparked other stories of like kids who knew, their heroes who became what they became because of the hard work that they put in. So that was a nice long discussion. And after that, I presented the kids with some scenarios that I just, at first we just did orally, and then I also gave them a worksheet to work through that I just created quickly in a Word document. But we went over scenarios that were fixed mindset versus growth mindset. So, for example, even just the simple sentence, "I'm not a good writer," versus "writing is hard for me, but I'm working at it to get better at it." So we talked about, the difference between the two, and also how can we take a fixed mindset statement and turn it into a growth mindset statement. So for example, if someone says, "I'll never be good at this," how can we take that and turn it into a growth mindset statement? I may not be good at this yet, but I will keep working at it until I get better. That would be a growth mindset statement. So we kind of went through lots of those examples first as a group, and then I actually gave them a worksheet to work through. And that was pretty much the end of that lesson. We corrected it together as a group, and that was that. So this was like basically introducing in depth this idea of growth mindset. And what's really awesome is that with the EduCalm Classroom membership, which is our online social emotional learning program for the classroom, where there are guided mindfulness audio practices for every single day of the school year. In there are 2 units on growth mindset, which means that there are growth mindset practices, audio guided practices for 2 months. And possibly more. I did them for about 2 months because I did Unit 1 for 4 weeks and Unit 2 for 4 weeks. So then as of that moment where I taught these lessons, then we started listening to these every single morning at the beginning of the day. So the kids were basically relearning the concept of growth mindset and how to adopt a growth mindset and live with a growth mindset. So, and the practices build on each other. So the students were learning a little bit at a time, developing their growth mindset a little bit at a time. So while we dove into that and started doing this on a daily basis, I kind of waited maybe 2 weeks or so just to let that concept really sit with them for a while. And then I introduced a dream board project, which is a project that we also have in EduCalm Classroom as like one of the kind of bonus extra projects in there. It's all there for you. Those of you who are members of EduCalm Classroom, it's there for you. It's an awesome project. I've done it with a couple different groups now. It's always been such a fun thing that the kids love doing. But you can also do this without having a membership to EduCalm Classroom, of course. You probably all know what a dream board kind of entails. And if you don't, I encourage you just to Google dream board and tons of stuff will come up. But the way that I did it was that I shared with them one of the worksheets that are in EduCalm Classroom as part of the project, which is essentially, and you could just create your own or just ask them to journal out these answers, but basically asking them, what does the life of their dreams look like, feel like, taste like, smell like, and sound like? So they had to fill that out. And then I asked them to write a list of goals that they want to accomplish. So any goals at all, it could be school related, hobby related, sports related, like anything that they could think of. And it could be kind of immediate goals, like, bringing back this, I want to learn this one math concept that I'm struggling to understand. Or it could be like long-term goals, like, I don't know, I want to become a doctor or whatever. So they had to fill that out. I had grade 6 students and I feel like I have quite a strong group this year. And I actually asked them to fill out the page. So that was like coming up with 20-ish goals, big and small. So that was kind of the introduction into the dream board. And then we took one class for them to put their dream boards together. So I asked the students to find old magazines, maybe some old images from old books, artwork, like whatever they could find. They had pens, they had markers, they had, whatever they wanted, craft materials, construction paper, textured paper, or whatever. And they basically put together a board that showed all of their dreams that they want and goals and dreams that they want to achieve. So they searched for and they cut out the images and words that embody their goals or speak to them. And then they clipped out everything, including colors, words, interesting images. Some of them put quotes in there. I really just let them go to town with this. I told them to create something that's really beautiful, that every time they look at it, it will remind them of their goals and dreams, and it'll make them smile and make them feel happy inside. I was so amazed by what the kids put together. Like, they are so creative and imaginative, and I was blown away by this portion of the project. Now, once they had their dream board made, they had, these ideas of their future, what they want to chase in life to, be happy and keep growing and have big goals. This was the fun part to me. So really incorporating ELA, we did a little writing activity here that ended up taking like quite a bit of time, where the kids wrote a journal entry about a day in the life of their dreams. So they wrote basically from morning to night, one day in the life of their dreams at a future date. So they had to pick any date into the future, and it could be a date 2 years from now, or it could be a date like 30 years from now. And so they had to write about that day from morning to night as if it like had just happened. So it was like a journal entry that they wrote. Okay. And so the first thing that I got them to do, and I also did, I modeled this first, was to do a brainstorm of what they wanted to include. Because obviously, from the list that they had originally created from their dream board, they wouldn't be able to include all of those things in their one day in the life of their dreams, right? So I made a list on the board for myself of what I wanted to include. I actually modeled this whole process, which I am a big fan of the I do, we do, you do gradual release strategy. Huge fan of it. I find it works so well. And so I did that with this. So first I did the brainstorm, and I decided to write as if I was retired, just because I thought that way it could be kind of different than what I'm doing now. And so I wrote, about a day in the life of my dreams in like, I think it was 2050 I chose. And so then I just wrote a list of all the couple things that I wanted to include in this like journal entry. And then I asked the students to do the same, to do a brainstorm, just to start thinking about it. And then I modeled my journal entry. So I had some kind of big poster papers, I don't know, flip chart paper kind of thing. And I wrote out my journal entry, making corrections as I went, editing, I went through the process with them. And if you're familiar with the I do, we do, you do, then you probably have an idea of what it looks like. But I basically took them through my writing process. And as I did that, I would often ask the students, what did you notice me do just now? And so they would say things like, and I actually have the list here in front of me that I made with one of my groups, one of my 3 groups. Like the first thing on this checklist here is I reread, and reread again to improve my writing. Another one here, I made sure my sentences and paragraphs flowed well by adding transition words. I added spicy words in my writing, and I made sure I wasn't repeating the same words too often. And even things like as simple as I added a date at the top of my journal entry, and remembering that the date was into the future, right? It wasn't today's date. So just a list like that, that's just like a sample. The list was quite a bit longer than that. I won't go through it all. But basically, as the kids noticed what I was doing, we would write it on this checklist. And so this checklist became their writing checklist, okay? And it also became what I used to evaluate their work. So once I modeled, and I did this, when I do this modeling activity, I usually do 10 to 20 minutes max at a time, because I find then, I start losing that engagement. So I do that usually at the beginning of class, and then I move on to other things. So that kind of lasted probably a good week at least, where I just modeled every day. And the fun thing is that when you wait a day and then you do your next 10 to 20 minutes, we notice, the kids and we notice new things that I could improve upon on the things that I wrote last time. So it's really fun that way. And one thing that was really fun with having 3 groups is that I actually took my work from one class to the next to see how those kids could help me, that other group of kids could help me to improve my writing. So that was really unique, because in the past I only was able to do that with one group. So I really enjoyed that. Once I did that, I didn't do a we do portion for this. Those of you who know kind of the I do, we do, you do process, I only did an I do for this one. Because I thought it would be kind of hard to create a we do of a day in the life of my dreams as a class, right? But I'm sure we could have come up with something creative, but we just didn't really have the time for that. And like I said, I was also doing some other things in my classroom during that time. So then once I was done modeling my day in the life of my dreams, then it was the kids' turn to write their own. And so they worked through that slowly. And again, I gave them a couple periods just so that they could go back to what they wrote last time to see how they can improve it, right? Because it always helps to have fresh eyes on your work. And so then they, of course, use the checklist that we had created as a class, but to ensure that they actually use the checklist, I went over each thing on the checklist with them as we did it as a class. So basically, like I said, the first thing was reread, and reread again to improve my writing. And so I got the kids to do that. So I gave them, 5 to 10 minutes to go over their writing to improve it. And then the next one, I made sure my students and I made sure my sentences and paragraphs flowed well by adding transition words. We came up with a list of good transition words, and then I gave them 5 to 10 minutes to just work on that, and etc. Okay, so just to ensure, because I find when we just give them a checklist and we're like, use this checklist, I often find that some of the kids are amazing at it, but some of the kids, they check everything off and they say, yep, it's done. But when I actually take the time to go through each point with them, it makes a huge difference. And I see lots of improvements during that time. So that was that part. And then I took the time with each kid to conference with them to do the corrections. I find that doing the corrections, when it's not with them, I feel like they don't really learn new things. But if I take the time to correct with them, it's really a good learning opportunity with them. And it's also a great opportunity to build a relationship with them, to have some one-on-one time. So I made sure to make time to be able to conference with each of them, which of course is a huge undertaking, but to me, it is so worth it. And so then the last thing, once I had the chance to correct with each of them, then they did their final copy, and they actually asked me if they could do their final copy on the computer. And I said, sure, that sounds good. But I also took the opportunity to teach them about Word and about formatting. So I basically did the same thing where I modeled my work, like what I had written out, my day in the life of my dreams. I modeled it to them on Word to show them formatting, because I often find that kids don't yet know in the middle years how to do that stuff. So another kind of interdisciplinary thing here where I took the time to work on the tech side of things with them. And I also took that time to teach them how to hand things in properly. And we kind of played a little bit with that. And that gave me the opportunity to get students ready in case we ever go to remote learning again. That this way, now they're good. They're good to go for remote learning because they know how to hand things in. They know how to use some of the different programs, etc. So I kind of deviated a little bit there too, because I just gave them a little bit of time to play with all the tech side of things with my guidance. So that was a great little opportunity there. And that just happened authentically because the kids asked me if they could do their final copy on the computer, which I agreed to. And so that was kind of the bulk of the whole lesson/project that basically lasted a good 2-3 months. And then this December, so then they were all done their project, basically end of November. And in December, they shared their dream board. We celebrated their work with the class, and they shared their dream board or so I gave them the option, because to some of them, this was really like personal work that they didn't want to necessarily share everything, but I gave them the option. They could also either share their dream board, tell us a couple dreams that they have that is on their dream board and an explanation as to why it's there, or they could just read out A Day in the Life of My Dreams. This gave us the opportunity to celebrate their work, to give the students some compliments about their work, about their writing, kind of that building that confidence piece, that self-esteem piece. We know that's a big thing in grade 6. And so then it gave them the chance to do kind of, I didn't call it like a presentation in this case, but to work on their oral. So lots of components to this project, both in health and ELA. And so The last thing is too that with the dream board, I wanted to make sure that they would be able to see it often, that they can look at it all the time, because the idea is that we built this dream board so that they can always have their dreams at the forefront of their lives, right? So we put their dream boards up somewhere very visible for them so that they can look at it often. Now, I'm recording this right now in December, end of December. But another thing that I have planned for the new year, just to bring back the concept and just a really small activity, is that, and I know Kaylee talked about this in the last episode, she talked about affirmations. So I want to do, instead of just like your regular New Year little worksheet activity, I want to teach my students about affirmations, and I want them to create an affirmation for 2021 of a dream or goal that they have. I haven't done this activity yet, so I don't know quite how it will go. But in the growth mindset, the second growth mindset unit in EduCalm Classroom, there is a lesson plan and worksheet there on exactly how to teach this and how to do this with your students. But basically, I will be modeling my own affirmation and then getting them to create one. And it's kind of same thing as the dream board, where we're going to put it somewhere where they can see it often. And that was pretty much the whole project. On a side note though, I also printed out quite a few of our posters in the growth mindset theme in EduCalm Classroom. And one of them, it says, "I can do anything and everything." And this is a poster I put up in the classroom, and I use it constantly because when I hear students say like, "Oh, I can't do this," or "This is too hard," I just point at the poster and it reminds them, okay, yes, got to make that switch to growth mindset. So something as simple as a poster that says, "I can do anything and everything," is so useful in the classroom. So now every time I catch them in that I can't kind of fixed mindset space, I can just remind them subtly with the poster. Super useful. So I hope you enjoyed this super practical and applicable kind of projects, a little bit different from what we normally do. But I just felt like this project went so well, and it's not the first time I do it. I've done it with different groups of different ages, and of course, it looked a little different with different groups, but either way, it's always been such a loved project by the students, and I feel like they got so much value from it and they learned so much, and I saw their writing improve throughout the process and their mindsets change, and it's just been so wonderful. So I just really wanted to share with you kind of the ins and outs of this project, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that it wasn't too rambly for you and that it was useful for you. I would love to know if you found it useful. Let me know. You can connect with us on Instagram at EduCalm. That's EduCalme. And your exit ticket for today is to try out a portion of this project or all of it or whatever. But dive into growth mindset with your students if you haven't done so already. And of course, let us know how it went. And you can, again, do that by connecting with us on Instagram at EduCalme. That's EduCalme. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share it with a friend or a colleague that would also get value from it. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable time with us. I know you don't have too much of it, and I hope that you have an awesome week.